Happy New Year's, everyone. Glad you guys could join us here. If you're listening to this on the day that it's released, it is January the 1st, 2024. By this time, we should be driving flying cars. We should have replicants walking the streets and Blade Runners. And it's different. It's right.
Yep.
It's not.
I've got my first goal for the year. Is not to write 2023 every time. The year needs to be written.
Let's get this. I always think about that. Like when you think of like the year, the number, like 2024, it sounds like some crazy number. Like think about that. Like when I was a kid, when I thought of like the 2000s, I thought that life would be so different because in the movies, like the 2000s were always this wild time. I mean, you look at the movies like Blade Runner happened in 2017, so you're like, whoa, this is crazy. And then, or was it 2017? It maybe been a different year, whatever. But the Blade Runner. Have you ever seen Blade Runner?
It's a remake.
They have the original from the 80s, and then they have the new one. The good movie, like a fun, like
I don't think I've seen it.
Fun cyberpunk movie, But it's even think about Back to the Future, right? 2000, they had flying cars and stuff. Yes. And I remember when I was in like second grade, I remember this paper that our teacher had us write. It was like, what do you think what the world will be like in 2000? And I'm talking about hover cars and everything else. And the biggest change is like as far as inventions or discoveries in the last like little bit seems to not be like the cars and stuff like that, but more of like social media, unfortunately.
I would like one of the things that I think actually futuristic is like AI, like the
AI of course. I mean, we're just
pretty. I'm like, wow, that's kind of
that, right?
We're kind of living that a little bit. The AI stuff is pretty interesting. It's just so weird. Like as we're going through, it's like I'm like, this is a little scary, but this is. And then the robots, like seeing like the robots that they make, these little like was it Boston Dynamics or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, those things are like. It's a little freaky, man. They can kind of control them and they move like certain ways. Some can move like animals and like people and do backflips. I'm like, this is kind of crazy, man. So
I wonder if at some point, because as our populations get lazier and heavier and because nobody's exercising and stuff, and we get way better at playing video games, if it's just going to be eventually a battlefield fighting with drones, and then whoever runs out of money to like produce enough drones to fight back, that's it, right? Eventually it'll just be like battlefields will be in these places, and you'll have people flying and like playing with these like drones from a computer screen somewhere thousands of miles away, and whoever loses the battle it's like a video game.
I think it's already like that way. I mean, there's so much like drone strikes. I mean, you hear about it all the time. I mean, like that shit's already like here, which is scary again because it's like you can just sit back in your little chair, your little wheelie chair, and just stare at a computer screen like you're playing a video game almost. This is kind of, you got like these little nerdy people. Nothing wrong with being a nerd, but like nerdy people like
Zeke. That's what Zeke does.
Oh wow!
Like not now, but like he was doing that, I guess, when he's out out West Coast. Yeah, so
that's crazy. Man.
So anyway, guys, random start to this podcast, but let's actually get into what we're here for today. But I don't want this to turn into like a crazy Eugene and Chewy just go off the rails episode.
It's awesome.
The today's podcast, obviously, we're January the 1st. So we're going to talk about some ideas on just like making 2024 hopefully a better year. So Eugene and I are going to share some ideas on stuff that we did this past year. That we executed on, and then also share some different ideas on maybe stuff you could do to help make your 2024 a year in which you executed on the things that you found important rather than simply collected more information, collected more ideas, and the year basically ends up about the same. Also, as a short, quick plug, I am ending the registration for it's a little thing that I have going on. If you're on my email list, you already knew about this. If you're not, then this will be new to you. I'll have registration up for you guys for about another 24 hours. So I'll give you to the second, and then I'm going to turn it off. This will be a special offer for you guys on the podcast. If you go to my website at jujitsu.net/EX2, that's elephant xylophone 2, EX2. You can join a registration where basically it's going to be me and a small band of people, and we're going to be working to try to knock out some goals in 2024. And we're going to be working together to do that. And if you guys want to join, listen to this podcast first. And if you get some value from the podcast, then join that up. That'll probably be useful to you. So with that said, let's jump into this podcast. A big thanks to our sponsors for helping make the thing happen. Charlotte's Web CBD. You can check them out at charlottesweb.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu30 for 30% off the order. Again, I always encourage people to try their products out if you've never done it before. They make fantastic CBD products, great stuff for everything from focus to recovery. And again, they have different products on their website for different effects, so they have things that are like gummies that are paired up with certain compounds and supplements that would be useful for recovery, for sleep, for focus. And then they also have things like balms and tinctures and things like that. Everything that I've used from has been really good. And again, if you guys want to check out their CBD products, go to their website at charlottesweb.com, promo code Jiu-Jitsu30. Also, if you guys are looking to get a new set of rash guards and shorts, a gi, maybe some Jiu-Jitsu t-shirts, whatever it might be, check out epicrollbjj.com. My buddy Matt runs it. He's been a good buddy for a couple of years now. And again, he runs some great stuff. I get all of my Nogi stuff made through him for myself and for my gym. I believe in his products, and I think they have great quality to them. And also good customer service comes from him as well. I think it's something that Matt does really well that a lot of people don't. If you guys want to check out his stuff, you can go to epicrollbjj.com. The website is, that's the website. And then the promo code is Jiu-Jitsu20 for 20% off your order at checkout. And if you guys want to support the podcast directly, you can go to our website at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. When you join up, you'll get access to an exclusive library of content from all the past guests we've had. This includes Jiu-Jitsu black belts and doctors and personal trainers, all these different people that have these interesting tips that could be useful to you for your Jiu-Jitsu. We have some unreleased videos such as rolling videos, stretching routines for Jiu-Jitsu practitioners from Eugene. There's seminars that I have recording, all kinds of cool stuff like that. A free or a ad-free version of this podcast. And again, you get all that and more for an inexpensive price at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And guys, last but not least, as I mentioned before, I always do things with my email list first, my Chew Crew group first. If you guys would like to join and get a couple of free ebooks for your Jiu-Jitsu, one goes into how to develop a game plan for your Jiu-Jitsu. The other one is how to break through training plateaus by adding focus to your training. Focus is going to be a big key of what we talk about today on the podcast. And again, if you want to do that, go to my website at jiujitsu.net/join, JOIN. When you join, you'll get access to the daily email that I send out and get access to those 2 free ebooks. I don't spam anybody. And again, you can unsubscribe at any time. So with that said, let's jump into this idea. We're approaching now, we're in New Year's. We're in the New Year's 2024. And I was thinking about this. A lot of times New Year's resolutions and these moments to say, this new year, I'm going to do this thing. And a lot of times it gets kind of seen as cliche. And I think a lot of times it gets kind of seen as cliche because, especially with like gyms, right? I mean, we don't really do it at my gym because we don't need to, but like traditional weightlifting gyms, they really crank up the advertising when it comes around New Year's time, right? It's like, oh, it's the new year, new you, that kind of stuff. And so it gets seen as cliche, but I think there's something to it though. I think a lot of times things can be cliche, things can become stereotyped, but a lot of times there's some truth to that. There's a reason for it, right? And so I was thinking about that. When you think of like January, when you think of like the end of December, if you live in most parts of the northern hemisphere, when you get into the last week of December, you're approaching, the shortest days of the year, right? You're approaching what would have been the winter solstice, where they have the shortest day of the year. And again, less light. You got to think, for us as humans, all of you, I think, would agree, when the days get shorter, you just don't have as much energy as you did in the summer, right? The earth that you're living on at that point, the side of the earth that you're living on, is getting cooler. The days are getting shorter. You're naturally becoming a little bit more like going into hibernation. You typically, you might even be getting a little bit heavier, eating a lot of food and, not exercising as much. I've got a big old furry chest right now because I haven't shaved my chest in months, my wife needs to use the Manscaped stuff to go ahead and get rid of that. But we'll get to that later. But again, we go through these natural rhythms. just like there's seasons of our life, we go through seasons of these with the earth, and we're attached to the earth. And so obviously it's going to make a change on who we are. And so we're now going into this period of more of a lull. And then when January sort of starts, you're now moving into it where incrementally the days will increasingly get longer and longer and longer until we get into, what is it, June or July, where we have the longest day of the year, and we would have like the summer solstice, right? And so we would move onto that. And so it only makes sense that we're in this, and there's a clean break too. So even from a business standpoint, at the end of the year, as many of you business owners, we love this part. We look at all the taxes we have to pay, and we see what we have left for the next year, right? And we're giving our employees bonuses and stuff like that. And you're just saying, okay, here's where we are moving into this next year. So it's a good clean break. And again, good clean breaks can be very useful. They can be done anytime. You can always make a clean break mentally with something, but with things that are going on, it's just a helpful thing to say, listen, that was back then. We're now in 2024. It's a brand new thing. Let's move into something. And so I was thinking about that. And so that's where, today's podcast is going to come into it. We're literally releasing it on our normal Monday schedule, which is New Year's Day. And I figured we would use this as a chance to just chat with you guys about implementing and executing, because that's the thing that I think is so important. That's really that's the stuff I geek out on. Like I'm one of those guys that I've talked about this so many times. I could care less about doing a million different things. And it's like, I just want to be able to do a few things really well. It's like my jiu-jitsu. I remember back when I was a white belt in different ranks too, even at black belt, I've always been around guys who would, they would make me almost feel stupid to be around them, because they would talk about all these different techniques that they knew, all these different ideas. But then when it came time to roll, or their competition results, I was always doing better, right? And then even with the students, I would see how their students perform versus mine. Like, am I doing something wrong? No, my students were doing better. And I think this is the idea. It doesn't matter what you know. What matters more is what you do, right? That's so much more important. So that's what we're going to focus on today for the podcast.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I think one of my struggles is like wanting to accomplish all these things, and then you kind of accomplish nothing, or you feel like you haven't made a lot of traction. Yeah, you think you can do everything. You can never say no. And I think there is something about saying no that's difficult, but also very kind of rewarding, because taking kind of like, no, I'm good. I'm good with what I'm doing. I know what I need to focus on. And I think being able to say no is a hard choice, because I feel like I don't want to miss out on any opportunities. However, if you say yes to too many things, you do nothing well and you get nothing accomplished. So,
managing inputs and being willing to take back your no is really important. A lot of times when we're younger, our no gets taken away from us. When we're younger, right? Like, if your parents tell you to do something, you don't get to say no. You got to go do it. When you're a kid in school, right? What happens? You have to do something. This is like in sort of the mythology, sort of the metaphorical speaking, right? Like Joseph Campbell would talk about this with like Nietzsche's work and stuff, right? There's the dragon, and on each scale is a thou shalt. And so you've got to take back your no, and you got to slay the dragon, right? And you slay the dragon with your no. Your no is your sword. And so a lot of times we get into this habit, and I'm guilty of this just as much as anybody, and it takes a lot of restraint from me. I want to say yes to everything. One, because I've been conditioned from a kid to say yes to everything, because I'm not supposed to have a choice. But also, two, like you said, you feel like you're going to be like stepping over opportunities. You're like, no, I can do more. I can, like, there was like, I spent 20 minutes the other day screwing around doing this. I can just shave off more time off that. I can get more done, be more productive, whatever. But like you said, at a certain point, you've either got to start to delegate and get other people to help you, or you just got to say, I can't do anymore. And you've got to be okay with that and stick to what you can do better. It's like jiu-jitsu, right? We know that we can't master every technique. Right? We're not going to happen. If you do jiu-jitsu for long enough, you're going to be lucky to have mastered maybe a handful of techniques, and that's it. Even the great Roger Gracie, one of the best to have ever done it, he says he's only mastered like a handful of techniques, right? So if that guy says that, then, what hope is there for mere mortals like us? And so, I think it's an important thing to think about. You want to focus on what you're best at and really dive into that, whatever that might be, whether that's jiu-jitsu training or whatever it is. You got to take back your no. And then the other side to that is you got to manage your inputs. there's a lot of stuff coming out at all of us, and it can give us this feeling of just like endless amounts of opportunity, right? There's just so much, and that creates chaos, right? That's, I mean, like a chaotic, like everything. Like it's like when you think of jiu-jitsu, for instance. We'll use this as an analogy because, a lot of times I think jiu-jitsu can simplify some of these abstract ideas. When you think about jiu-jitsu, let's say you step onto the mat and you have no idea what you're doing. Let's say that you're experienced, you're a black belt just like you are, but you have no idea what techniques you want to execute on the person, right? Let's say it's a tournament. You're getting ready to go and you have no idea what you're going to do. Man, that is not a good place to be because, again, you now have seemingly endless amounts of opportunities. What do you want to go for? If you're a black belt, bro, you got so much, and you get so much that, in fact, it seems like you don't have the option to do anything, and you sort of get paralyzed, right? By paralysis and analysis. This is like I was listening to one of my sort of guilty pleasures is I like these there are these gaming conferences where these guys that create like video games, or do different aspects with video games, the GDC. So they're like game developer conference or something like that. It's a cool thing. I just like listening to the different people talk. Like I said, I don't care so much about the video games because I don't play video games a ton, but I love listening to creative people talk about stuff. And it's interesting how you see these people create something that just doesn't exist, right? That's a really interesting thing, is because it's all creativity. And creativity is something I find fascinating. So anyway, like listening to one of the guys who's a graphic designer, he said that when he was working on like inferior machines back in the day, it was a much easier process because you were limited. You said you had you had this many colors and that's all you had, right? Some of those old chips, you'd have like, 12 or 16 colors or something. And that was it. And some of those before that were less. And then, then you had the SVGA chip had 256 colors, right? It's like, whoa, 256. And then now you have endless colors.
Yeah.
And he was saying that one of his tricks to, make it a bit more manageable is to give himself a palette. This is what I'm going to work with. These are everything that I'm going to do for this video game is going to be within these color schemes. Everything's going to be there. And he said that it helped him become more creative by being more restrictive. And I think that all of us can be that same way, where we're in a world where there's so much stuff going on and all of us have so many things tugging at us. And like you were saying, Eugene, it's important to take back your no and just say no to things. This way you can say yes to other things, because every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And so again, if you say yes to this thing that you don't really want to do, but you're just doing it because you feel like you should, you're saying no to something that you could really want to do. And so you got to be mindful of that.
Yeah, it's a great point. A great point. Like I didn't think, you think about, you say yes to other stuff, but if you really aren't passionate, or I mean, sometimes you develop a passion for an idea or something you want to take part in, but you are truly saying no to something else because there's only 24 hours in that day, and there's only so much you can accomplish. So the more you add on your plate, the less of something else. Something has to take the back seat.
Something that we're going to talk about in the I've dubbed it my Executors Challenge for 30 days, right? Coming up. I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, one of the things we're going to talk about in that group is one of the first things very early on is like the idea of strategy and tactics, and being strategic with your goals and then tactical with your goals. So when you think of strategy, think of the general, right? When you think of tactics, think about the enlisted men that are in the field, like, shooting the guns, blowing stuff up, fighting, right? When you think of the general, they sit there and look at the big picture. And they say, well, we're going to take this area on the map and we're going to do this so this happens. And they see this whole big grand picture, and they're thinking about it in a big picture kind of way. But then when you look at the tactical stuff is like immediate, right? Like you're fighting. So if the general saying we're going to move into this region to take this thing that'll give us this resource that we then can produce these, that's a big picture thing, versus, okay, the general told these guys to move, and now you've got like the corporals and privates and sergeants fighting right now, shooting guns, blowing things up, and they're fighting for that region, right? There's a difference. And so when I think about my goals, I try to give myself a little bit of time to just relax and think. This could be just a couple days off from my normal rhythms of work and everything else. It could be a vacation to myself, whatever it is. I try to give myself a little bit of space, and I try to choose the things that I want to go after in a very strategic way. Right. So I'll write them down, and they go on a whiteboard in my basement next to my office so that I see them every day. Right. So because I'm like, I think I probably have like a touch of ADHD or something. I don't know. But like, if something is out of sight, out of mind, I just I don't pay attention to it. It's like, it's gone. It's either I've got a touch of ADHD or I'm just really good at compartmentalizing, right? Like I can focus on one thing and I can be ultra focused to the point that everything else no longer exists, And so I can do that. But the problem is that sometimes I've got to have things to bring this thing back into existence, because if I forget it exists, it's gone to me.
Yeah.
And so I have like my office, like even like I've got like a board here that's got Post-it notes on it of stuff I've got to get done this week, because it's like, I need to see it. I got to be able to touch and feel. And if I can't do that, I typically don't do so well. So anyway, I got to be strategic, and I need space to do that, right? I need to be able to like take a step back and look at the bigger picture. And then from there, then I give myself some sort of like tactical thing that can help me accomplish this. So like when I decide to go after a goal, right? I don't have big 5-year goals or anything like that. I just have things that I want to do right now. And usually my goals are at the biggest are usually within about a year. And these year-long goals can have overarching like ideas that I think strategically how they could position me to help me out later, but they're typically just relatively short-term. I'm not good at this, like I've got a 10-year plan or something like that. I'm like, I'm moving right now because things change so rapidly, right? So anyway, then I try to give myself something tactical to do to get those things done. And I'll share a couple things with you guys that could be useful tactical wise. Like these are like things you can do like right now, not like a strategic's a big, going strategic, that's a big difference. It's a lot of hard thinking, but like the tactical stuff can be really easy to do. So one of them is, for instance, when I was working on the Swollen Roll product that I released last year, I worked on that for over a year with Eli. So, I was taking my experience. It's got it's like 96 pages. It's an ebook inside of the thing. It's like goes through everything from cardio tips to dieting tips to different resources, ideas of balancing jiu-jitsu. I did several different interviews with Eli to gather his ideas on things. And then we put those in. I had to rewrite those and put them together, put those into the ebook. And then we had to go record the videos. And then we did that. I had to build up all the infrastructure on the page. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we did. We had them on the podcast. So it was a year worth of work. And so for me, again, like I like to do things immediately. And so I have trouble sometimes working on things long-term.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I gave myself a 2-minute rule where I would set aside some time each week, no matter what, where I would say, listen, all I've got to do is work on this thing for 2 minutes. I got this from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. And basically I'm going to give myself just 2 minutes to work on this project. That's it. Now I had time allotted to myself because deep down, I know I'm tricking myself, but I simply said, if I do it for 2 minutes, that'll be the accomplishment for the day. I did a little bit of work on it. Now what happens 2 minutes into it? I'm like, okay, I can keep going. And then I would work on the thing for like 4 hours,
Oh, wow.
But it started off as 2 minutes. And, in some cases it's even like with the workout, if there's something you struggle with, the 2-minute drill can be great. So basically, let's say like if you're working out and lifting weights, maybe you want to lift weights this year and lifting weights is really hard for you. Just say that you're going to go in and do like one set. I'm just going to go do one set because I guarantee you do one set. You're like, I can do another, then you do another. Then before you know it, you've done a whole damn workout. Right. Or if you go into the gym, maybe you're like, I'm just going to go drill. Oh man, drill. Oh, cool. Well, I feel like rolling now, like once you get moving, that is the thing. I talked about this in a post that I made recently where I was saying like, you don't wait for the motivation, right? The spark to your motivation is your movement, is your action. You get motivated by your action. Honestly, that's how it actually most of the time works. You can sit around and you can wait for something to come to you. That's probably not going to work. But if you simply take even a small amount of action, there is nothing more motivating than that. And it has a sort of natural like principle to it of like a body in motion stays in motion. When you get moving and you start making that progress, it feels so motivating. And so for a lot of you guys, if you're trying to tackle a difficult goal, and again, difficult is different for everybody, the 2-minute start can be really, really useful. That's something that I did. Now, another thing that helps me out, again, because I've got a lot of stuff going on, is that I try to make some element of this habit towards whatever goal I'm going after a daily rhythm. I try to make it to the point where it feels like if I don't do it, I'm not brushing my teeth or something. Feel dirty, feel gross. For you guys that are on my daily email, like it takes time to write those.
Yeah.
That took me when I first started. I started writing the daily email back in 2018. And by 2020, if I didn't do it, I would literally feel there were days where it would be, 11 at night and I'm getting ready for bed. I'm like, oh, snaps, I didn't do one. I have to do one. And it wasn't about, again, I'm trying to make them good, of course, but it was a part of, not letting it break the chain. I want to keep the chain connected for as long as I can. Now, there's some days that I don't send it for intentional reasons, but if I'm supposed to send an email that day, I've got to do it. I don't want to break the chain. And so something you guys can do is like try to figure out a daily thing that you can do for your goal in setting up a daily habit, whatever that might be. If it's working out, like I work out a little bit every day, even if it's on a rest day, I go for a nice long walk, either outside or on a treadmill, just to get some blood flow going and some stretching. But I try to do something daily towards whatever I'm after, because I feel like if I'm doing it daily, I can't forget about it. And I feel it becomes just so rhythmic where it's like, there's no longer a question. I don't have to think anymore. It's like you just get up and you do it, and you don't really think about whether you feel like it or not. You just do it. And typically after I'm done, I feel better about it.
Yeah, I think building routine, building habit. I mean, that's really the way. There's really no way about it. You're forcing yourself to build it into your daily routine and build it into your habit. And I think over time, it's just like you said, it's just like brushing my teeth. It's just something I do. It's a non-negotiable. It's just something that is part of my day. Like I take my vitamins or do this or do that. It's just part of my day that I have to accomplish and achieve. And I think that's really huge as far as like building, just building a solid and consistent habit, which is really what you need when you're starting something new.
Right. Well, you think about it, like a lot of people want to accomplish like big things. They want to accomplish big things. When you think about something, you think about big things. When you think about what those big things are made up of, they're made up of small things.
Yeah.
That's what gets you there. And I've used this analogy many times. I think of most things that we do when we try to go after them, like any sort of really tough goals, I think of them as like drops in a bucket. So if you think about having like a leaky faucet, right? Let's say you just got a little drip going, little drip, right? Not a big deal. You put a bucket under it to catch the water. Well, if you leave it there, a couple drops, it's not a big deal. It's very insignificant. It looks like nothing. You leave that sucker going for a while, though, maybe a day, maybe overnight, whatever, all of a sudden that bucket's going to be overflowing. And I think of my training that way. I think of my work that way. I think of all the things that I do that way, because again, that's really what makes them. When I think about, okay, how did I, go win worlds? How did I win Nogi Pants? How did I build a gym that has, we're around 600 members right now. I mean, there's like, and again, I didn't do it by myself, of course, but how was I a part of making this happen? You just show up and you do something every single day towards it. And sometimes I was going in the wrong directions.
Yeah.
But I was like, you know what? Hey, at least I closed off that direction that was a wrong one. Now I at least know a direction that I don't need to go. So that at least closes off options for me. It allows me a different place to focus. But I find that, again, even if you're going the wrong direction, you're still moving. And so, again, this is why for me, it's important to first look at, okay, what is it that I'm going to do? What's the big strategic goal? Cool. Got that. Now, what am I trying to accomplish, and what can I do daily, or at least almost every day, that will help take me to that goal? Because that's my drop. That's what it is. And I'm just like, as long as I can keep those drops accumulating, I know something worthwhile is going to happen. And again, like you this past year, you went on jumped on the Eli coffee bandwagon with dieting, right? And
For sure.
which I'm happy you did. It's one of my favorite things when someone goes, like, this past year it's been incredible, because so many people that I know have jumped on board with Eli, and every time they do, they'll tell me, they'll say, "Hey, Chew, I want to let you know, I hired Eli for my diet." And I'm always so happy when they do it, because I'm like, I know that in a few months you're going to look like a different human, and you're going to feel amazing, and you're going to be like, "Holy shit, I can't believe that I was able to do this with just changing up a little bit of food and exercise routines," right? And so it's been incredible. But you think about like that, right? If you diet for one day, right? Okay. So the big goal, the big thing that you wanted was, you wanted to look better, man. You wanted to look better with your clothes off, have some more energy, all that stuff. One day of dieting means jack squat, right? Not changing anything. But like a week, 2 weeks, you'll notice a little difference.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden you're like, that becomes motivating. And then like 3-4 weeks, and then you're like, holy crap, I can see abs, I like crazy. And then like when you look at your body now, like we were talking about it recently, you weigh the same or a little bit more than what you did when you started, but you look way different. Like your composition wise, like, I mean, you're way more jacked than you were when you started.
Yeah. I think, you know, when I first decided to do it, like, I think you got to have commitment to your goal. You got to believe in it. You got to have commitment to it. And the commitment is simple. The commitment is, I got to send my pictures in, number one. And number two, you know, so Eli's going to know exactly what, and if I screw around, he's going to know, because I got to send him a picture every Wednesday. He's going to see what the hell's going on. The other commitment for me, man, is money. Money is a huge commitment. When I put money towards something, that means you're buying in, that you are, you know, I don't want to waste my time or my money. So like, I think I wasted so much time trying to do it on my own and figuring it out. And I just knew I had to realize the whole delegation piece, right? I got to delegate. So I'm delegating to Eli. Look, I'm going to invest. I'm going to pay you some money. I'm going to delegate you with this task so I can focus my brain power on other things, because I don't know. And it's going to take me too damn long to figure out exactly how I need to eat, exactly how I need to do this. I want you to tell me. And I'm just going to be a good little soldier. I'm going to do it. You know, I'm going to follow along. I'm going to execute, essentially. And
right, because he knows the strategic reason as to why. Because for instance, if you like, I knew, for instance, when he started with me back in 2020, and I gave him the weight goal that I had, and we started eating. This was like about 8-9 weeks out. He knew why we were eating a very specific way from the beginning. I didn't. He was being the general. I was just being the soldier. That's right. Correct. But he had the strategic idea, and I was being very tactical and just making the food that he told me to make.
Yeah. And, you know, there was a lot of resistance at first for me, because I was like,
what kind?
I felt overwhelmed with weighing my food, with prepping it, with figuring out. And, you know, I did things like, my wife was like, let's do it together. And she, you know, like I said, like I'd mentioned before, we're eating a similar diet. We eat different quantities. You know, our workouts are a little bit different, of course. But like, man, doing it with her, kind of being that, like, my environment changed, because like, it's not like she's eating a certain way and I'm eating a different way. We're eating the same way. And so now my environment, the food in the house, besides my kids eating, you know, they eat kind of whatever they want.
Yeah.
As long as I can get their little butts to eat, that's really all I'm concerned about right now. But like, we're doing the same thing. We're doing it together. So so there's a lot of overwhelm for me. And she's like, look, I'll take care of the meal prep. I'll figure that out. And then, you know, I'll have you come in and help prepare and meal prep with me, but I got to figure all this shit out and figure out how it goes. So, but then there's the hardest part is getting started. And then the next piece is like, all right, a couple weeks in, you're like, all right, I've been doing this thing. Now I'm starting to get used to it. But then you start seeing the results, right? You see the weight change, you see the composition start to modify a little bit. And you're like, oh, damn, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I can put a little more weight. I can, you know, initially it's a lot of neurological changes, meaning when you're lifting weights, it's more of like your body's getting used to the movements, getting more efficient. It's able to, it's like learning a technique.
Right.
You're getting better at that technique.
Yeah. You start becoming more efficient, using less energy. You feel stronger in those positions. Exactly.
You're better. You're better stable or more stable with your exercises if you're doing dumbbells, whatever. So initially you see the weights on the bench go up and your other lifts go up a little bit. And like, that's pretty cool. And I know, you know, for me being a physical therapist, I know it's not really muscular changes as of yet, but like, I'm starting that process of stimulating my muscles. And eventually, you know, you get to about 6 weeks and you start actually putting on some muscle, or, you know, and, you know, it starts to actually change your body. And I think like that's a motivating thing as well. When you start seeing it, and you see the results, and something, it's starting to pay off a little bit, you know, and that's kind of one of those things, like you have to get yourself to that point. And it's hard sometimes. You're like, oh man, I got to work out. I got to get up at 5 and I got to go do my walk and I got to do my abs today. You know, I don't want to sleep.
Yeah.
But you don't give yourself that option. You just get it done.
Yep. And the whole idea of doing the being overwhelmed, that's a big one. You know, I remember my wife, she started with Eli this past year, and she's lost like I think almost 30 pounds.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, it's great, man. You know, and honestly, she doesn't really like to work out much, so she works out a little bit. She'll go ride horses with me, and you know, go for some walks. But I mean, she's lost 30 pounds just with diet. You know, and she was incredibly overwhelmed, right? And so I remember when she won't be too embarrassed if I say this. When we first started off, when she feels overwhelmed, my wife, she cries a little bit, right? And like she knows, by the way, it's so weird. We laugh about this. She'll start crying and she knows she's just being emotional about it. Yeah. So she's like, looks at it. She's looking at all the things she's going to have to change. And she starts crying. I'm like, you're right, baby. She's like, I'm going to go be emotional for a minute and I'm going to go cry. And I just need to do this. And we'll get ready. And we'll just go after this tomorrow. Right. Tonight, I'm going to just like sulk, but tomorrow we're going to go after this. And, you know, she started doing the diet and she was overwhelmed at first, but then again, it became very repetitive. She's doing it every day. It's getting your reps in, getting practice.
Correct.
And then now it's like, it's not even something you think about. Right. Yeah. And even her, like when we started this, one of my students gave us this gadget called a Ninja Creamy. And this thing, I
saw you post about
it. This thing is amazing. So like you can use it to make like legit regular ice cream, but we've been making, it makes almost like a soft serve consistency that like hits the spot. It hits that ice cream spot. We take basically protein, a protein supplement we like, almond milk, and then we'll put in like I think it's like 10 to 15 grams of monk fruit if we wanted a little sweeter, depending on the protein powder. Some don't need it, some do. And you freeze it, and after it's done freezing, you put it in this gadget, and man, it turns it into like soft serve ice cream. And it's amazing because it's literally just protein and almond milk, so there's nothing bad in it. So I don't feel sluggish after eating it, and it fits in my macros. So I'm like, this is fantastic. And you know, even her, you know, as someone that was originally overwhelmed, now she's like looking at labels and she knows how to like, ooh, this has got a little too much fat in it or whatever. And so again, it's like everybody has their thing. And anytime you decide to take on some major change, whatever that might be, you're going to feel overwhelmed. I remember the first time I started doing the gym business stuff full time. I was overwhelmed. I had no idea what I was doing. And diving into the idea of business, it's like there's so much. And but again, it's like, so what? Enjoy it. I think the thing that I think this is like, you know, people say like my superpower is X, Y, or Z. I think one of my, like, if you wanted to call it quote superpowers, right, is I can do something, I can get into it, and I really don't get too fixated on like what I'm getting out of it in that immediate moment. So for what I mean is, like, let's say that when I started training, I never cared about belts. I never cared about stripes. I wanted to win. I was very competitive, but even if I got my face smashed on the mat that day, I still loved training. I was happy and I was going to come back the next day. When I lift weights now, I lift weights and I enjoy doing it. And if my body is still changing to some degree, but you know, I'm getting older, so it's going to do less and less. But if I never make any more changes in my body and it looks exactly the same, I never increase my strength, I never grow an ounce more muscle, I'll continue to lift because I enjoy the activity of it. And, you know, even with my work, a lot of the stuff that I do, I just enjoy it. Now, I'm lucky enough to where I offload at this point a lot of stuff I don't like doing. But I used to do the stuff I didn't like doing, and there's still stuff I have to do I don't like doing. Yeah. But I get to spend most of my time just doing things, and I just do them because I enjoy doing them. And I'm not worried about, well, what if this isn't a big winner sometimes? Like it happens all the time on YouTube. I'll make a video, and I think it's a good video, but it bombs. And I don't want to say bombs. It only really resonates with a small group of people. And then other times I do great. I don't make a judgment. I just do it. And so I think that for you guys out there, if you can find something, I think it was like, was it Charles Bukowski? So the writer, this dude, it was kind of interesting. So he started writing, quit writing, ended up getting a post office job. And then he started writing. He quit writing, or he quit the post office job, didn't have enough money, went back to writing. You know, this whole thing, he basically wanted to write, right? And so I don't think he made his living writing until he's in his 50s. And then he kept going. And then he had this really big surge for like about 20 something years. And then he passed away. But in his gravestone, it says, "Don't try." Now, you can interpret that in different ways, but the way that I interpreted it was, because this is based off some of the stuff he wrote, is like, if you got to try really hard to do something, then just do something else. For instance, like with jiu-jitsu, people say, "Oh man, if it's really that soul sucking to go train jiu-jitsu, don't do it. It shouldn't be a soul sucking experience. You should enjoy being on the mats." Now, if you're just struggling mentally with some stuff, that can be a whole other set of things. But you want to choose things that you want to enjoy chasing. You don't want to spend your whole life chasing things that suck your soul away, and you chase them simply because someone told you were supposed to, or society told you were supposed to, right? Like, for instance, if I had a goal to get a really expensive car, that would be soul sucking for me. I don't care about cars. I don't like them. I don't see what the big fuss is. I was like, I need a car to drive me from place to place, and I want it to not break down on me. Other than that, I really don't care. And so for me, which now some people, they love cars, and that could be a very motivating goal for them.
Sure.
It's all about you. You got to be strategic. You got to be the general, right? That you're using your neocortex up there. You got to make good decisions. But again, don't try. Find things that you can do that you enjoy doing on some level. Again, we all have to do stuff we don't like sometimes, but try to find things that like you can do. And there's not so much friction. Again, it might be overwhelming in the beginning. It can be tough in the beginning. That's fine. But the overwhelming desire is there. Even my wife, sure. Does she love having to diet? Not necessarily, but I know she enjoys being able to eat and see the results that she's getting. So again, she's no longer trying to do it. She's just doing it, and it's become a rhythm and a pattern. And so I think that's just an idea. You want to find things that you enjoy doing, because that's the difference between like Simon Sinek in one of his books talks about this idea of the infinite game versus the finite game. I've probably talked about it before. The finite game is when it's like playing football. A football game is a finite game. There's a very clear beginning and ending, right? But when you think about a lot of the things that we do, like jiu-jitsu is an infinite game, really. I mean,
I think so. Yeah.
A jiu-jitsu tournament is finite, right? That's a finite game within the infinite game. But when you talk about infinite games in his books, or when he talks about them in his book, the idea is to do something where the goal of the infinite game is to just keep playing the game, right? So like the goal for me and like my businesses is to just keep playing the business. I don't want it to end. I don't want to sell it to anybody. Right. I want to keep doing it. When I'm training jiu-jitsu, I want to keep doing it. When I lift weights, I don't want to quit lifting weights. I just want to change the routine from time. I want to keep doing it. So you can think about these things, right? Find things that you're okay with them being the infinite games. And that really makes it nice, because then you're no longer attached to what is the immediate like return on this thing. It allows you to play that long game, and you can just enjoy what you're doing.
Right. Yeah. Enjoying the process. I mean, the process is the majority of it. The goal is like, all right, once you're at the goal, that's it. You've accomplished it. Your goal is there. That's pretty short-lived, right? Well, I've accomplished this goal. It's on to the next one. Okay. The process that takes you, how long it takes you to get there, could be a year, could be longer, right? We talk about, setting up these goals. Like, you have to enjoy the getting there. Like, you have to enjoy doing the thing, because you have to do the thing every day. In jiu-jitsu, if your goal is to get to a blue belt, we call blue beltitis, everybody knows about that. If your goal is to do jiu-jitsu to achieve a blue belt, then you're finished, and then you're not going to have that desire. It's not going to be infinite for you. It's going to be very finite. It's going to be very much, boom, I got this blue belt. All right, I'm done. I'm out.
Yep.
Versus the goal is not belts. The goal is skill acquisition, technique, the joy of training, the feeling. I always talk about the feeling after we had our little old school crew, all our old guys, they're all beat up now. We had that Saturdays, we'd have that Saturday training. We just beat the brakes off each other, and then we just sit there for probably like 30 minutes. The sun would be kind of shining through the door, through the window, and we would just be having a beautiful conversation about whatever, bourbon or whatever it was, and just laughing and making fun of each other. And those are some, I knew that was like, it was such a special time. You don't appreciate now that it's gone, kind of. We still have that. We still have the discussions, but it's different. But like the process of learning and beating each other up was a lot of fun. And then enjoying conversations after, I think was just kind of icing on the cake for me. Yeah, so jiu-jitsu can be what you make it, right? If it's a tournament, yeah, it's very finite. Like my goal is to submit this person, win however I need to win, and achieve first place. Whereas I'm just there to kind of enjoy the process. For me, it's a process now. I mean, shit, I've got a black belt. I mean, I'd love to compete and win a couple things, but I don't care. That's just icing on the cake if I do.
It's interesting. You talked about the idea of the goals, and you're on to something next, right? You get the goal onto something next. That's something I was talking to one of the guys about, and the other day, and he was kind of talking about like, he just kind of did something big that he had been working on, and then now he's done with it, and he kind of feels kind of it kind of takes some of the wind out of your sails. Like goals are weird because they motivate the hell out of you when you get a good goal that you're really like that you want to chase after. God, you get so motivated from it. But then once you get it, a lot of times there's a little bit of a letdown because nothing's changed, right? Because again, the goal's been accomplished and maybe some things have changed, but ultimately you're still the same person and things are still happening, and you don't feel, like you might feel better off or whatever, but it's not like you have some crazy happiness that just, spills out of you every single day. There's a little bit of a letdown. It's there's in the book by Paulo Coelho, there's the book The Alchemist, and in one part of the book, he's talking to the shopkeeper because he's going to go to Egypt. He wants to see the pyramids, and the shopkeeper's talked about, man, it's my dream to see the pyramids, and he says, come with me, let's go see the pyramids. And the shopkeeper says, no, because then the dream will be dead. Mm-hmm. He's like, I want the dream to be there, because if the dream's not there, then I won't have I don't have a dream anymore. Yeah. And so something, I guess, to keep in mind, because people say process, man, enjoy the process. And it always sounds like some hokey, like, meme or something like that. But it's true, because again, what you'll look at is like when you chase after these goals, and many of you, I'm sure you've had this experience where you chase after these goals, you go after these things that were so big and important to you, and you reach them, and it feels good, right? It's a good thing. But when you look back at it, you don't look back and think about, man, it felt so good to like, just sit there on the podium with my medal. I mean, it feels good. It does feel good. But to most people, what they enjoy and what they think about the most is, man, the battles that you had in the tournament, the training that you did leading up to it, all those different experiences that were meaningful, right? Even like with you, if you're battling with the courage to overcome certain things, those things play out. All those things that you went through that were the part of the process to make the things happen, that's what really becomes the things that stick with you. One last little idea for you guys is that, because we've been talking about just abstract stuff here, but I mean, hopefully some of this stuff is useful to you. But one of the ideas is, again, for like your training, right? So for instance, when I was getting ready for the Worlds in 2022, the Nogi Worlds 2022, I put together a training routine for me. So I was wanting to get ready for a competition. That was one. Mm-hmm. But there was an idea that I wanted to test, because I found that usually when I was getting ready for competitions previously, I always got sick. And I would always start to like run into injuries a little bit, little injuries, not major ones, little injuries. And it always seemed like because I was training too hard, right? So what I did with this particular competition is I sort of laid out my routine to myself. I sat down one night, was like, let's write this out. And I focused on 3 days of hard rolling, right? 3 days where I'm really rolling and going for it. And then I spent the rest of the week doing strength conditioning, a little extra cardio, and drilling, right? So I'm only rolling 3 days a week. And then I went there and I won, right? I won 4 matches in my division, and most of them by submission. And I won the tournament and got gold, right? Felt great. Got third in the open. So it was a pretty good performance. Mm-hmm. And again, I was kind of going against what is my urge to want to do every single day. And so again, that one helped me say no, because I gave myself a plan, and it helped me say yes to the things that sometimes, because for instance, like the drilling sessions, they're not always the most fun thing to do in the world. But I always felt better when I was done with them. And then sometimes I really don't care for traditional cardio, and like getting on the Airdyne bike and doing sprints isn't much fun, but I always felt better when I was done with them. And the result was good. The result was what I wanted. And so again, I put together a plan for myself. And again, this is going back to it, like with your training, maybe some of you guys listening want to make training changes. You want to make changes into your habits that you have for your training. A great thing to do is sit down and write out a week for yourself. What is your game plan? What is your strategy for this thing? Because again, all of you know, it is a battle when it comes into like your day-to-day routine. Like at nighttime when you're sitting down, everything's quiet, writing out a routine's easy. But then when it comes to the day-to-day, whether it's your kids not wanting to get up for school or go to sleep, at the end of the night, whether it's your boss saying, hey, I need you to stay a little bit later, or, everything starts to tug at you. Yep. And you have to fight for the routine that you're trying to make happen. And so my encouragement to you is to make a routine, to actually sit down and write out a routine. What do you want your training schedule to look like? And then you fight for that thing. Right. You fight to make that happen. You stay, after it. And going back to the stuff that we had with, our diet with Eli, one of the things that helped us out, right, was having a routine. Here's what you're eating every single day. So during those days when you're fighting just to like get things going, what you're supposed to eat that day. And sometimes that was really helpful to me, where I knew what each day of training was supposed to look like. It made it a little bit more predictable and easier to go after.
Yeah, I think having a plan is crucial, right? You have weekly goals. We talked about weekly goals, and then you could even have monthly goals, and then the ultimate goal. You said you write goals for a year. I think yearly, annual goals, I think is a great idea. But again, you got to have little wins as well, right? That's why we make maybe those mini goals, those weekly goals. Because all right, maybe I just did 2 minutes on this task every day, like I wanted. That's a goal I wanted to accomplish, and it's moving you closer to the ultimate thing that you want to achieve. But again, those small victories and even those small defeats, having like you said with the business, I did something wrong or something didn't go the way it was planned. You learn from that and you're all right, that's something I'm not going to do. Now shut that door, and that's not something I'm going to take part in, or I know that's not going to be beneficial to. And I think you learn, I think it's a way how you, those little failures or those missteps, I think are some of the most valuable lessons. Again, they're painful, and they should be. If you care about your goal and accomplishing what you want to accomplish, they should be painful. They should sting a little bit. But again, don't, I think they're important. They're very important.
You did something.
That's
I mean? Like that's what I come back to. How many times like have people wanted to do something and they don't do anything? Like, so you failed. So what? Good. So what? That's what everybody has to go through failure. Did you think that you were the one that wasn't going to have to? You didn't think that you were going to have some hard times? Like if you listen to anybody's, biography, right? It doesn't read, I did this thing and everything was great. There's all kinds of twists and turns and ups and downs. And our life a lot of times is not a straight line. Our life, it's Ralph Waldo Emerson talked about it like a ship. Basically when you basically tack the ship, you're constantly switching the sails to catch the wind. So a sailing ship does not go straight. It kind of zigzags. Now, if you zoomed up high away from it and you looked at it, it would just look like it's going straight. But when you get down into it, it's all zigzagging, right? And so our lives are the same way. We're not going straight. It's all over the place. There's all kinds of zigzagging and back steps and forward steps and everything else. And if you were to like look at it and really pull away, it would look like a straight line, and eventually it does. But when you're in it, it's anything but straight. And so again, like, that you're going to fail, it's going to happen, but so what? You're doing something, you're still moving, you're still trying to make something happen. And that's more than, friggin' 90% of people. Most people don't really try. They just they do just enough to get by. They do just enough. And again, for you guys that are listening, I encourage you to spend this year coming up and just find something. It doesn't have to be much. Just spend a month working towards something. And then again, if you start to see success, keep going with it. If not, whatever, you can switch off. But whether it's your jiu-jitsu and you want to get better with the technique, spend a month focused on a technique. If it's something with your creative work that you do like me, spend a month trying to get better at it. Focus on it every single day for a month. Whatever it is, pick something. And again, execute on it.
Yeah, I agree. I think you just like you mentioned, having a plan, doing something every day, being consistent. It could be small, 2 minutes a day, keeping it in front of you. I think that's a very good point that you shared, keeping it something that that you write it down where it's something you see it every day and it gives you that reminder, because it's gonna stay. If it's something you want and you see it, and you're trying to avoid it, but if you see it, it's going to kind of stick in your mind. So, yeah, Chewy, any goals that you got? Maybe something you want to share, that maybe any goals you got for the new year?
Well, You know, one of the things that we have coming up right now, right? Couple things. So for me right now, moving into the new year, I have my group that we just started this little executors challenge with, and I would like to help get some other people to make some progress. We're doing that. That's a goal, is to work with them for this next month. Notice I said my goal is to work with them. I have no control over what they do. My goal is to like deliver to you. We have the Jiu-Jitsu Open tournaments coming up and Jiu-Jitsu Open seminars. So I'll be doing a set of competitions and seminars this next year doing that. And then this next year, I have a goal to do a little bit more with the gym, both in terms of competition for students and also 2 events, because last year I had a lot of other things on the plate. We didn't do our normal things, like our normal events, like our 4th of July event or our Christmas parties. We used to do, we're usually doing those things. And so I want to get back to doing those things, because usually we have those events like, you know, we're doing friggin', you know, 4th of July events. We're having potluck dinners from time to time. It's what is it? The paintball gun stuff. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of things. So I want to get back to that. So that's another thing for this year. Those are a few. Cool. You know, again, notice with my goals, though, remember, it's not like, if you guys notice, I'm not outcome dependent. You know, it's like, I don't say I want to do a tournament and have 1,000 people. It's like, I want to do the tournament and I want to do my best job of doing, and that's it. Because that's all I can control, right? I can't make an expectation about it. With like the stuff for the gym, I'm going to do these things and I'm going to try to provide some stuff for the students wanting to compete. And after that, I'm not saying I want to have a world champion next year. You know, I want to say, look, I want to really work with these guys and I want to get them started in doing some stuff, and let's just see where that goes. And that's it. You know what I mean? And this way, my goal is to simply do the things that I can do, and then let's see what the outcomes are.
For sure.
How about you?
Great. All right. I've got a few. One is just to keep, like, you know, keep working out, keep staying consistent on my diet. That's just one. I started that. I purposely did that before the year started, before I turned 40 and before the new year. I didn't want to do, I just felt like I want to just start it now and just get through that stuff. And then maybe the new year is going to be an extra motivator to keep going, possibly. My line thinking. The other thing, I haven't competed in a while. I want to compete a black belt. I have not competed a black belt.
Oh, you haven't?
I have not. So I want to compete. My big thing, man, is the nerves. I had a couple times that I was going to compete, actually. And no, just once I was going to compete, but I had some medical issues, which hopefully are resolved. I'll know a little more, but I've been feeling good. And so I want to compete a black belt. I want to continue with that. I mean, continue to grow the podcast and, you know, reach more people and share stuff with the jiu-jitsu therapists, like with my YouTube, all my stuff, just kind of keep providing useful things, helping people stay on the mats. I mean, that's really it. And just, yeah, I mean, there's always a lot, like, you start thinking about it, your mind starts kind of going, but I think some tangible things as far as jiu-jitsu goes is just to compete, just get out there and compete and tackle my nerves a little bit. Deal with the nerves that come with it. That's the hardest part for me. Not when I'm out there. It's just the anticipation of the competition. So that's going to be a big one for me.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. And I've got, like I said, I've got a list of actual like specific goals on projects that I'm working on. But they're over there. And again, we'll, honestly, I'm one of these guys. My biggest goals, I try to keep to myself.
Yeah.
And it's weird. Like I was telling someone, like, when I tell, like, I remember they were like reading some book years ago, and it was like, tell people about your goals so they hold you to it. But I always found it was the opposite. When I would tell people that I did something, or about a goal that I was chasing, it was almost like I got satisfaction from talking about it, opposed to if I simply just kept my mouth shut and just did it, then I got satisfaction later on when I actually accomplished it. Yep. So for instance, like, instead of saying, hey guys, I'm going to lose a bunch of weight and get lean and get ripped, I just started dieting with Eli. And then all of a sudden people are like, dude, you look lean as shit. What's going on?
I did the same thing. I didn't say shit. I didn't post anything. I didn't say I'm weightlifting another day. I
just want to do it
100%.
So so like my big goals, those are still mine. Those kind of stay behind the Chewjitsu forehead wall there in my brain and over there on the wall. But otherwise, you guys will see when they happen. So anyway,
right.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us here. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. Hope you got something from it. Thanks to our sponsors, Charlotte's Web CBD. You can check them out. Again, I'm a big fan of their products. I like using it for myself as a recovery tool. You know, all you guys getting a little bit older, recovery is one of those big things we have to focus on. And it's one of the little supplements that I take that's in my toolbox. And again, I like taking it at nighttime after a hot shower, and it seems to help improve my sleep cycles and it helps improve, the sports-induced inflammation, helps reduce that a bit. And so again, I like it. You can check them out at charlottesweb.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu30 for 30% off the order. You can check out Epic Roll, rollbjj.com, whatever jiu-jitsu gear or apparel you're looking for. Matt over there, he's got great designs, great stuff, great quality stuff, great customer service. I'm a fan of his products. I use his stuff every day. You can check out my videos. You can probably see me rolling around in my own jiu-jitsu stuff, which was made by Matt. And so again, epicrollbjj.com is the website. If you want to save 20%, use the promo code Jiu-Jitsu20. If you guys want to support the podcast and get access to an exclusive library of content for a reasonably cheap rate, I would say it's cheap, inexpensive. We'll say inexpensive because cheap sounds bad. Inexpensive rate because there's value in there because we have guests for everything from black belts in jiu-jitsu to personal trainers to doctors who talk about different ideas that you can implement into your training or into your strength and conditioning. Inside of there, you also have an ad-free version of this podcast. There's stretching and routines and warm-up routines that Eugene made specifically for grapplers. And there's some stuff that I put in there like rolling videos, seminars, everything else. And so you can get access to all that and more at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And last but not least, guys, if you want to join my daily email, you can do so by going to my website at jujitsu.net/join, JOIN. When you join up, I'll give you access to a couple of ebooks that I give away. One is on developing your game plan. The other one is helping you break through training plateaus. So this way, if you're getting into a position where you feel like your jiu-jitsu is getting kind of stuck, you're not making any improvement, it'll give you some ideas on how to add focus to your game, so you can make that happen. And along with that, you'll then get my daily email, which goes into everything from philosophical ideas I'm chewing on, books I'm reading, things that I think might help you with your training, and just anything I think could even be possibly entertaining to you. So again, that's it, guys. That's it for the podcast today. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll talk to you guys next time.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.